Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of Strange Origins. This week I want to take things easy, maybe get your mind off of whatever crazy things have been going on in your life, and get into the backstory of a little house that a few of you may have heard of, the Winchester Mansion. So get cozy, maybe get a snack, and let's begin. Located in San Jose, California, the Winchester Mystery House boasts having had over 12 million people pass through its halls. But why exactly are so many people drawn to this Victorian estate? In my opinion, there are two equally interesting answers to that question that go hand in hand. But before I explain the why, I have to explain the how. Built by heiress Sarah Lockwood Pardee Winchester, the house began construction in 1884 and lasted for 38 years, until September 5th, 1922, when Sarah died of heart failure in her sleep. Some accounts state that the house was in construction mode 24 hours a day, a constant cycle of builders always there, though it has been stated in letters written by Sarah that she would send workers away for months at a time, so construction was not really a fully continuous project. In spite of those letters, the house was still awarded in 1989 by Guinness World Records for having the longest continuous home construction at 38 years long. When Sarah first purchased the estate, it was just an unfinished 8-bedroom farmhouse. Having had enjoyed remodeling projects in the past, she planned the construction of a grand mansion. Today it measures at 24,000 square feet. To put that into perspective, the average size of a home in the United States is around 2,600 square feet. That would make Sarah's mansion 10 times the size of a regular house. The mansion was equipped with 30 bedrooms, 2 indoor conservatories, 2 basements, 3 elevators, 13 bathrooms, 40 stairways, 47 fireplaces, 52 skylights, 6 kitchens, 2,000 doors, and 10,000 window panes, which happens to be more windows than the Empire State Building can brag about having. There is only one shower in the building, as showers were just becoming popular in modern bathrooms in the time of Sarah's life. Something else to note about the shower is that it is famous for being very small in order to fit Sarah's miniature stature, as she was only 4 feet and 10 inches tall. All in all, the mansion boasts having 161 rooms in total that we know of as of now. That's one more than was counted a few years ago, seeing as a room was discovered in 2016 in the attic of the house, which served as storage for a pump organ, some Victorian sofas, paintings, and a sewing machine that were all untouched for about a century. If you've ever been to the house, you may have noticed some strangely short, zigzag staircases. These steps, which were only a few inches in height, were built as a way for Sarah to get around with her rheumatoid arthritis, which didn't allow her to lift her feet up off the ground more than a few inches. Something else interesting about Sarah Winchester was that she was seemingly obsessed with the number 13, according to the lore. She had a chandelier reworked to include 13 candle holders instead of the customary 12, and also had 13 ceiling panels in the entrance hallways, 13 windows in the 13th bathroom, of which there are only 13, and she even had a special window that she designed which featured 13 amber and blue stones. In the closet of her blue seance room were 13 hooks, though some still speculate if these hooks were added by her or by someone else after her death in 1922. The house's interior was built in the aesthetic movement style, which some state as being, quote, art for art's sake, unquote. In my opinion, it's more of a Victorian, utilitarian version of Baroque art, which is very famous for being ostentatious. You can see when you walk through the house that there are details literally everywhere of scenes of nature. Intricately designed flowers are beautifully placed onto the fronts of metal radiators, doorknobs, and hinges, and cobwebs are carved into the facades or featured in costly stained glass windows. Different culture styles were also adopted and integrated into the house, including Persian, Egyptian, Japanese, Moorish, and Greek details. Some rooms even feature Lincrusta Walton wall covering, which was also built into staterooms in the Titanic and the White House, and is known for being a sign of extravagance and elegance. Some of the Lincrusta can even be found in one of her 2 ballrooms, which cost around $9,000 to build during Sarah's lifetime. Today, that ballroom alone would cost around $125,000 to make. The floor features designs in rosewood, oak, ash, and maple, and it's said that no nails were used to create the ballroom in its entirety. No expense was spared when decorating for Sarah. Silver and gold adorn the chandeliers. Stained glass windows by Tiffany & Co. are to be found everywhere, including designs created by Mr. Tiffany himself. There was even a multicolor window created to cast a rainbow effect on the walls of the room at certain times of day, until it was rendered useless by the addition of a wall on the other side of the window. She had indoor plumbing with hot water and push-button gas lighting, which during the turn of the century was an extreme boast of wealth. Just remember, during this time, pretty much everyone was still using outhouses, and indoor plumbing was pretty much non-existent. Even the grounds and gardens of the mansion are something to behold. Some of Sarah's original trees still live on the property, including a $20,000 yew tree, which are famous for growing in Christian graveyards and for being very poisonous. There also are hundreds of flowers and 10,000 box hedges that were cultivated to keep prying eyes away from the mansion. Even the indoor conservatories were lavish, displaying hidden sinks everywhere and special flooring which could be lifted up to reveal an underfloor of metal. That special floor would allow Sarah to water her plants and wash away the excess water through specialized drain pipes, making gardening indoors easier than it had ever been. To be a housekeeper in the Winchester house meant that you worked with state-of-the-art household features. The basins that the maids used had built-in scrub boards and soap holders, and the corners of the staircases and hallways had rounded-out corners so that they didn't accrue excess dirt or dust, allowing the women who swept all of those lengthy hallways to get done quicker. Around the house were also ways for Sarah to communicate with her servants, such as call buttons that used a number system to alert housekeepers where in the house she was, and also calling tubes that allowed people on different levels of the home to speak to each other. Overall, though, the architecture is extremely strange to say the least, seemingly haphazardly planned. The house boasts having hallways that lead to nowhere, trap doors, staircases that go up to ceilings, a skylight in the floor, doors that open to blank walls, and even a famous door that drops off the second story to the yard below. Some of these decisions make sense when you realize that the 1906 earthquake that hit California forced the construction workers to tear down 3 of the 7 stories of the building and begin with different designs, instead building outwards instead of up. And it also makes sense to know that Sarah, though not a trained drafter, would often give her construction workers blueprints she had designed herself, seeing as she was passionate about architecture. But still, it seems odd that there are so many unnecessary parts of the house. With the exception of the stairs that led to an otherwise non-existing 4th or 5th story, not a lot is explained concerning the weird construction of the house, or even her strange, alleged obsession with the number 13. So, why did Sarah build this house in the first place? And how did she even come to be able to afford non-stop construction on an exquisitely crafted Victorian mansion with expensive, lavish details and entire areas of unnecessary house? To answer that question, you have to understand the origin of Sarah herself. Born in Connecticut to a well-to-do family, Sarah grew up to become an extremely well-educated and accomplished young woman. She spoke 4 languages, attended the best schools in her area, and eventually married well during the Civil War. But unfortunately for Sarah, disease targets everyone, wealthy or not. Her only child, a daughter named Annie Pardue Winchester, sadly passed away 6 weeks after birth due to marasmus, which is a form of malnutrition caused by the body's inability to metabolize proteins. The couple never had any more children, and 14 years later her father-in-law, followed a year later by her own husband, would die of tuberculosis. This would leave Sarah as the sole heir to $20 million, which in today's currency would be around $500 million. She also would from then on have 50% ownership of the Winchester Repeating Arms Company, and would have a subsequent income of around $1,000 a day, or in today's money, $26,500 every single day. This inheritance would make her one of the richest women alive at the time. With enough money to fund any of her future hobbies and anything else she wanted to do for the rest of her life, Sarah became a sort of recluse. She had what most would refer to as a dream life, though I don't think that Sarah viewed it that way. All of that money and control did everything for her but bring back her dead husband and child. So she did what anyone would have done in her time era who wished to communicate with the dead. She hired a medium. If you listen to my episode on the origin of the Ouija board, you know that spiritualism, the era of strong belief in communication with the dead, brought a few things to fruition. Along with the Ouija board, spiritualism also gave birth to the Winchester Mansion. While reports were unsubstantiated, the story that has circulated for quite some time now states that Sarah, grieving her family, had a session with a medium while still living in Connecticut, who got her in touch with the spirit of her dead husband. During that session, her husband supposedly communicated with her through the medium and told her that she needed to move to California, where she would continuously build a house in order to keep herself safe from the vengeful spirits of those who had died from Winchester rifles during American wars. Some reports state that she was to build a house for ghosts to appease them, while others state that the house was a way to trap them, ending the curse that was put upon the family that caused the death of her loved ones. Winchester Repeating Arms had a hand in winning quite a few wars and was even dubbed the gun that won the West. They were among the first to mass-produce rifles that had the ability to fire multiple times between reloads. This meant less time between shots and an advantage on anyone on the other side of the barrel. Because of westward expansion at the time, the guns were used to drive mostly Native Americans and foreign settlers away from their homes, killing an incredibly large number of people. It was because of this great mass of lost lives that Sarah felt, according to rumors, that her money was cursed. According to unsubstantiated reports, there were even a few contractors who stated that Sarah had daily seance sessions in order to contact what were called good spirits. These good spirits would tell her how best to appease or confuse the evil spirits that wished to harm her by telling her what rooms to build next in the house. Some stories say that she always had a seance session at 2 a.m. in a famous turret dubbed the Witch's Cap. Others state that she held her seances in a blue room that could only ever be entered into by Sarah, as she was the only one that had a key to the room, and she kept it on her person at all times. Another strange thing about this room is that it features one entrance, but 3 exits. One exit exists in the closet of the room and only has a handle on the inside, while another exit is a door that drops down to the kitchen sink of the story below. Other stories state that she slept in a different room of the house every night, hoping to confuse the ghosts about her whereabouts. These stories really are all conjecture, though, seeing that there is little evidence to back them up. Sarah never kept a journal, and wrote few things in her lifetime that would help to corroborate any strange doings. It makes sense, though, that these stories are as sensational as they are. Papers loved reporting on Sarah. From a journalist's point of view, she was a dream subject, extremely wealthy, she was that rare American success story that gave others hope for their own financial situations. She also didn't comment on rumors concerning herself or her house, so papers could really say anything they wanted. All that really remains of Sarah's life is some letters she wrote to her family, a will that includes 13 sections and which was signed by her 13 times, and of course, a sprawling, labyrinthine mansion. Thankfully for historians, the house became a journal of sorts for her, though that journal does end up leaving more questions than answers. One of the biggest mysteries of the Winchester house, in my opinion, are the meanings behind two Shakespearean phrases that are placed in the stained glass windows of the finished ballroom. Two phrases from two separate plays. The first one reads, quote, "Wide unclasp the tables their thoughts," unquote. And the next one reads, quote, "These same thoughts people this little world," unquote. If you think you have any idea as to the meaning behind these phrases, please head over to my Instagram page, where I've posted about these stained glass windows, and tell me what you think in the comments section. Rumors of how strange and haunted the house was even spread to famous magician Harry Houdini, who famously visited the house in 1924, 2 years after Sarah's death. Houdini was a paranormal skeptic and devoted a portion of his life to debunking fake spiritualists and mediums. Houdini couldn't shake the feeling that something was off with the house when he visited, even dubbing it the Winchester Mystery House, which is its official name today. Sarah died of heart failure, asleep in her bed in 1922. It's said that when news spread to the construction workers that they stopped what they had been doing so abruptly that nails were left half-hammered into the wood. She left her vast wealth to her niece, who had lived with her and served as her secretary for a decade before beginning a family of her own in her 30s. When she sold the house, it was surprisingly only valued at $5,000 in 1922, which in today's currency is about $78,000. This was due to the fact that, besides damage caused from the 1906 earthquake, the design of the house was simply just impractical. Somehow the house sold for a whopping $135,000, which is a price tag that equates to about $2 million today. That investment was returned greatly when the people who bought the house labeled it as a historical tourist attraction and began to do tours. Luckily, the man who bought it saw the value of the house and, using his expertise as a theme park owner, used the mystery of the estate to help draw paying customers in. Today, you can visit the Winchester Mystery House, which gives regular tours in person or online, or you can even go to Disney's Haunted Mansion ride, which was said to have been partly based off of the design of the home. Or, if you're poor like me, you can always watch Stephen King's miniseries Rose Red, which was partly inspired by the Winchester House and Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House. BuzzFeed Unsolved has even done 2 episodes of investigations at the house, including one where one of the investigators stays the night in Sarah's bedroom. Or if you just want a small online tour of the house, I linked a YouTube video in the description of this episode that is beautifully shot. So, was Sarah Winchester a superstitious spiritualist with a curse on her head, or was she a woman trying to keep busy so as to move on from the tragic demise of those that she held dearest? She was known for having worn black clothing the rest of her life, perpetually in mourning. Based on historic fact, the reasoning behind Sarah's actions do make sense within context. The earthquake that rocked her home would have had a devastating effect on construction. She was also known for paying workers well above average rate and even allowing their families to take up entire floors of the property. It's possible that she just wanted to pay the people that kept her company well and also had enough money to delve into whatever weird architectural obsession she had next. While the idea of ghosts in Sarah's life is a great story, they don't have to have existed for her actions to make sense. There is, of course, though, the ghost stories of those who work in the house these days. Tour guides and overnight guests report the sounds of footsteps, lights turning on by themselves, and weird voices. The famously extravagant ballroom is even supposedly haunted by a workman by the name of Clyde who walks around with a wheelbarrow, continually working on the large fireplace that takes up a large portion of the room. There also have been sounds of nails being removed from wood and being dropped to the floor, and piano music coming from empty rooms, which makes sense seeing as Sarah loved to play the piano. And on a few rare occasions, people report that the appearance of a woman in black roams the property who suspiciously looks a lot like Sarah Winchester, and whose presence is unexplained by the current owners of the house. All I know for a fact is that Sarah's life was a sad one. The things that she loved most in the world, the priceless presence of her husband and daughter, were stripped away from her, and no amount of money was going to be able to buy them back to life. So she did her best to fill her life with love. She was notoriously beloved by her servants, for whom she named many of in her will and bought homes for. In return, they stayed on with her for decades and named their children after her. It's ironic that she would die a year after the vaccine to tuberculosis, the disease that killed her husband, would be discovered. Something that the papers failed to recognize while writing stories of her seance sessions and recluse nature was that she was a major benefactor to a tuberculosis hospital in her home state of Connecticut. Something that, in my opinion, is very telling of Sarah is of what she hid behind layers of wall in the extravagantly built ballroom of the house. In a cleverly hidden safe were obituaries of her husband and daughter, and a lock of her baby's hair. While many thought that she had hidden away money or valuables, what was in that safe was all that she had truly cared about in life, her loved ones. So I guess that just goes to show, money doesn't buy everything. As this episode comes to a close, I would like to thank my listeners for supporting my dream job. Without you, I would just be someone talking into a microphone at 2 a.m. in my parents' basement, like a crazy person. But still, I would love to have more to talk about. Please email me at strangeoriginspodcast@gmail.com and tell me what it is about this week's topic that interested you. Your suggestions for future episodes, or even stories of your own experiences with the strange and unexplained. If you would like to help this podcast grow, allowing me to make bigger, better episodes, be sure to click the follow button or even give it a 5-star rating if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. If you're feeling bougie, you can also donate to my Patreon page, which is linked in the description. You can donate any amount, and each tier of donation receives great gifts like shoutouts, stickers, and even exclusive episodes. Or, if you're poor like me and would just like to enjoy more spooky stuff, be sure to follow my Instagram page at Strange Origins Podcast. And if you know of a friend, a sibling, a coworker, or a pet dog who would love to listen to my podcast, send them a link. It would be greatly appreciated. Be safe out there, but more importantly, guys, remember to keep it strange.